All right, welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. Here we are. I got Jimmy Prendergast today from Modern Athlete Strength. Jimmy, welcome to the show, my man.
Scott, I really appreciate you having me on tonight. I look forward to chatting it up with you on everything strength and conditioning related.
Yeah, this one, I cold called you guys. I was like, hey, I love what you're doing. I've been watching it for the better part of a year now. The stuff comes across as very practical, very just no nonsense. It's rooted in science, but it's also rooted in not just theory of application, in actual application across the board for the, and I hesitate to use this word, but I'm going to say it because people relate to it, and that is the tactical athlete. But I think more specifically, it hits home for folks that are high achievers and are trying to do a lot of things all the time. And that's very hard to communicate the message of how to do all the things all the time. And we're going to get deeper into this. And I don't think there's a lot of other folks that are doing it as well as you guys are. So I just want to say thank you for taking time out today, answering my email on that cold message, and being here with me today. I am stoked for this conversation.
Absolutely, Scott. I really appreciate it. With Modern Athlete, we basically try to blend, if you think of like Rocky IV, the Ivan Drago, the Rocky Balboa. So you have the science and then the practicality of just blue collar hard work. That's what we try to do at Modern Athlete. So,
well, yeah. See, that's what I mean. That's exactly the kind of thing I mean, because I think people can relate to. And again, we're going to get into some stuff today that, I don't want to lose people. And I said that before we started. We're going to talk some details, and I hope some of the coaches out there listening will be like, yes, that's what we need to be hearing more about. And those folks that are really just trying to do a good job all the time, with all the things that they do in their fitness, athletic, nutrition, endeavors, and trying to kind of be ready for everything at any time, can pick out the pieces that make the most sense for them without going too deep into the weeds. But I think it's important that we set a base for, kind of the level that we're talking from. So in that, let's just start. Tell me a little bit about you. I know very little about your total background. I know there was some time in strength and conditioning at the collegiate level. You have a whole team of guys. We're going to get into that. Just tell us about yourself, man. Get us on the same page.
Absolutely, Scott. So I spent 13 years in college athletics. So if you know anything about college athletics, typically you do the route. If you want to get into college strength conditioning, you go to undergrad, you do your grad assistantship somewhere, and you kind of bounce around until you hopefully get a head strength and conditioning job. I was the complete opposite of that. I went to Hofstra University for my undergrad and then just fell in love. I went for exercise science. And just to fast forward to my senior year, I did we have to do a 300-hour internship. So I decided to do it with the strength and conditioning department in athletics. Absolutely fell in love with it. I always had a passion for the barbell, but never worked. I always played sports growing up, and I knew that could be a career path, but I just really didn't know anything about it. And that was my first experience with working with college athletes in Division I. So I worked with football, men's and women's lacrosse, and wrestling as an intern. And then I loved it so much that I decided to volunteer. I didn't have a job yet. So I just volunteered my time, worked with the head strength coach at the time, just kept picking his brain and just getting more experience coaching. Because there's definitely the value of, you have to have the science background, but nothing beats like just being in the trenches and actually getting your hands on people and coaching them and just getting the coach's eye. So super valuable from that standpoint. And then unfortunately in 2009, they dropped the football program at Hofstra University. So that led to a position opening. And was I ready at 23 years old to be an assistant strength coach? Absolutely not. But as I tell everybody, I told my interns, like, you're never truly ready for anything. You're never ready to get married. You're never ready to be a husband, a father, all these things. But I was like, I'll never forget the head men's lacrosse coach was like, hey man, you ready for this? I'm like, honestly, coach, I have no idea, but I'm going to give it everything I got and I'm going to learn along the way. So it was learning by fire, that's for sure. So I started off in 2000. At that point, it was 2010 as an assistant strength coach. My team responsibilities were men's and women's lacrosse and wrestling, and then just kept progressing my career at Hofstra. I had opportunities along the way, but I just loved Hofstra and stayed there. I actually interviewed for the head job. I forget what year it was, but I didn't get the job at the time. And that was honestly the best thing that happened to me because I didn't have my master's. And the athletic director at the time was like, hey, man, you have all the intangibles, you have the certifications, but you don't have the master's. So what did I do? Mm-hmm. I got the piece of paper. And then the next time I was up for that position, then I got the head strength and conditioning job. So I went assistant, associate head strength coach. And then my last title there was associate director of athletics for sports performance. Just more of an administration role, but I was also still a coach. And then COVID hit. So cut down the nets with men's basketball. It was right during COVID when the world shut down. We cut down the nets. All of a sudden, March Madness is canceled. I'm working from home. I get to take a deep breath. I'm hanging out with my family more. And it's like, wow, I like having breakfast with my kids, having dinner with my kids, and all those things. So decided to make a career switch. Well, not a career switch, still in strength and conditioning, but just moved to the tactical space and just kind of partnered with Modern Athlete. And that's where I'm currently at right now. So just definitely not the normal career path in college strength and conditioning, because usually you have to bounce all around the country. I was able to stay at the same university I went to my undergrad all the way through the rest of my career. And then I was happy and proud of what I did there in the college side. And then I had an opportunity to move into the tactical space, and that's where I'm at.
Very abnormal. If that's a word, like it's very, very abnormal in terms of the not having to jump around. I've had several strength coaches on, had several that have come through here at the gym at Red Dot, and now moving on, and they're doing that. They're bouncing around or in the process of bouncing around, and it's tough on you, it's tough on the family, but it's something, that's often it's a requirement. It's like a prerequisite. This is just what happens to get that next position. How cool. Also, how cool and being so cool and being able to see it all happen in the same place. So you're not having to readjust to a new administration, new cultures, things like that. There's probably learning, obviously, that can go on and having to bounce around like that, but it's also not having to start from the bottom every time to kind of navigate your way through, like, how do I navigate this thing, knowing that I know what I'm doing, maybe, or maybe not, and then getting to that next spot. I think the other cool thing about that is understanding both the practical application end of things, like what really happens in the training room, to the business end of it. Being that director, that is something that most people will never get until they are 15, 20 years down the road into their career. And that is after they've been bounced around so many times. So there's probably a lot that you could add to understanding organizational management, organizational structure, working with groups, working with individuals as a coach, like with Modern Athlete now, and maybe working with groups of people and understanding how to manage that culture, what hierarchies look like, and getting programs implemented. And that is not an easy thing to do. You can have the best program in the world, but if nobody does it, it's worthless, right? So 100%. Yeah. I'll get off my soapbox on that and just kind of get into the transition into the tactical space. So what drives that, man? I mean, you're working in sports your whole life and kind of the civilian thing. What drives the transition outside of COVID, which, by the way, as negative as that whole period of time was for so many people, myself included, the things that came out of that on the positive back end, and the change that it forces or drove. Very cool. So here we are at Modern Strength. But what was the linchpin there? What brought you over?
So I always had a passion and I always had a respect for police, fire, military, first responders in general. So Modern Athlete was just a good fit from that standpoint of just getting to work with all populations. And that was really my driving factor, and family being number one, just a little bit more work-life balance. So that was the biggest driving factor, and just a new challenge for me, because again, I could have stayed at the college setting my entire career, but I was at a point where I got young kids. I'm like, well, let's try something new. And we moved out of state. And again, you just got to bet on yourself. And I'm a big fan of that. So
I love that.
I'm going to figure this out. Bet on yourself. That's to anybody out there. If you're on the fence about anything, and you're not sure, we only got one shot at this merry-go-round of life. Just bet on yourself and you'll come out the other side the right way. So
I believe that 100%. I believe that 100%. It's the same thing I did. People thought I was some people thought I was crazy. Some people congratulated me. Some people looked at me funny and just said good luck. And I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just did it. Okay, so get into the tactical space. So for you at the time, and this connection that you've made with these other guys, talk about that team a little bit and what you're and who are these individuals and where are you guys coming from?
Yep. So we are a blend of Division I strength coaches as well as military veterans, and that comprises our whole team. So it's unique from that perspective, like having the veterans background as well as the collegiate strength and conditioning coaches, because as strength and conditioning coaches, even though I was never a police officer, military, fire, as a strength coach, you just have to have a plan and you have to do what's called a needs analysis. Basically, just same way I would do it in college, you just do it with a different population of human being. Like, all right, in college, working with athletes, what does it take to be successful, to be a basketball player, a lacrosse player? Well, on the tactical side, what does it take to be successful in the military, fire, police? So you just look at all those things, and then that guides the program design. So without getting too far into the weeds of energy systems and things like that, which we could always go into, but that's the biggest thing. So it's nice having the blend of the college and then certified, obviously college degrees and all those things, but then having the military background is huge as well.
Yeah. So the piece there about bringing these folks together from all these different things or all these different backgrounds. So what I didn't hear you say was that we're trying to take what we learned from coaching college football athletes to the strength and conditioning room with somebody that's operating in a military environment, right? Whatever their job is, right? And we're asking those guys to do a lot of different things. If you go back over to football, you've got what? You've got your linemen, you've got your running backs and linebackers, you've got your receivers and your defensive backs, you've got your quarterback. And while they're all foundationally doing the same things, there's a bunch of very different things that have to happen for each one of those athletes in order to make them good at whatever it is that their job is on the field, right? Cool. And we're also looking at from a seasonal basis, like where are they in their career, right? Their career path, what foundations do they already have underneath them, what do we need to improve, what maybe can we do less of with this particular person? And then we're finding these gaps maybe or deficiencies, and we're trying to improve on those, all while managing big group of people. Right. So there's a lot of things going on there versus moving over to, again, the military, where depending on who you're working with and what they're doing, let's just be honest, they have a lot of things to do. They have to be good at a lot of things. It's not just one thing. They may have a specialty, right? But they have to be good at everything. Can we agree on that?
100% agree. 100%.
The other thing we're not dealing with is a season. Right. This could happen at any time, any place where I have to be out for a day, 2 days, a week, months on end, which obviously throws a wrinkle into how you program for people and how they should be or can be training based on their circumstance. So I don't think that's probably news to most people out there, but I think it gets lost in looking back or reaching back for programming that worked for a particular athlete at some point. And it makes sense. This guy got big, strong, and fast doing this programming at this point in his career or his timeline or whatever. We're not taking that and trying to adopt that to this particular audience that you have. And so when we talk about that audience, let's just be specific, like as specific as we can be. Who are these guys? Who are these people? Who are the people that you're coaching and you're training?
So it's a mixture. We have police, we have firefighters, we have military, all of those things. And each job has a unique mission set, if you want to say, or just job responsibilities and qualities. So we have to, if you look at training as just a giant pie chart, there's only so much time, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to work on mobility and injury prevention. We need to work on strength. We need to work on power and all these things. In college, it's very canned and structured. Like you mentioned, like you have your off season, your early off season, your late off season, your preseason, your in season. Wipe that slate clean for the tactical population because there's no set season for them. So that's where I gravitate towards more of a total body model, and we can talk further about program design and things like that. But because you have to work on multiple qualities because you don't have the luxury of time. So that's
the time being the sometimes the most restrictive factor. Again, the CAN program. When you're seeing your athletes in the training room at NC2A or whatever, they're coming in at this time during this season. Then I move to the next group of athletes, and it can be very organized, very structured, and they get into a rhythm, right? They kind of know what they're being asked to do, right? They know this is what the workout structure looks like. This is what I got to get through to today, and I don't want to make it a box ticking session, but sometimes it can turn into that, and sometimes that's good for the coaches. Like, okay, these guys know they're going to get in, they're going to get the work done. If I broke them into groups, I know there's the high achievers. I never have to worry about them. There's the guys in the middle that need a little extra eyes on or a little help, maybe more programming adjustments because they're making advancements or not, right, kind of thing. And then you have the people that you have to chase around and light fires and keep them off their cell phones or, from whatever.
Correct.
Versus the current community that you're working in. Is it the same or is it different?
It's
with maybe more along the drive and what you have to babysit versus what they can self-manage.
Yeah, definitely. There's no babysitting. That's for sure. Absolutely not. So if anything, it's pulling the reins back, which is a good problem as a strength coach. Yeah. Whereas sometimes in college, obviously you sometimes have to be the thermostat in the room, like with your athletes. If it's a 5:30 in the morning workout, you have to create that energy. With the population that I work with and the team that I work with, I don't have to set that thermostat. That thermostat's already juiced up, so I don't have to worry about that. So, which is fine.
Which is fine when you're a 23-year-old strength coach, but by the time you get to be a 33-year-old or a 43-year-old strength coach, it's a little tough to contrive on a daily basis. So yes. I feel that, which is part of my draw to working with that population as well, is because really what we just got to do is we got to point them in the right direction, right, and just make sure they stay pointed in the right direction, which can be a challenge, and we'll get to that a little bit. Yeah. But just going back to the entrance into this, like, what was the biggest? Was there any shockers? Like when you got into, wow, this is much different and this is how, I didn't realize this. Was there anything that like really hit you in the side of the head going, man, I need to rethink some things here or look at things differently?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously every coach has to do a needs analysis. So like looking at all the tactical professions there, you have to see, all right, what injuries are the most common? And can we address those things? Can we mitigate the time? And I'm not talking about like a jammed finger. I'm talking about things that require surgery, cause you not to be able to do your job. And then can we mitigate that with injury prevention on the front end? And then what energy systems or what qualities do they need to be successful? If somebody needs to ruck a long distance, well, how's their aerobic capacity? How is their lower body strength? Because all research supports that. If you have good lower body strength, then that's going to carry over to rucking as well as your aerobic system. So it really just depends on the particular population, but it's really doing a needs analysis, just like I did in college. But now there's no national championship that we're training for. It's literally just trying to get this individual ready or this team ready for whatever they have to do in their job. So
is it fair to say you're not only doing that, but you're also trying to keep them ready at the same time?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, especially because I'm not 23 years old anymore. I'm 39. And the individuals I work with are not 20 years old either. So they may only be in their 30s, but they're not sitting at a desk for their job and have no mileage. We're talking about like a 5-year-old truck, but it's got 300,000 miles on it. And we got to keep this thing going. And we may have to just make adjustments here and there to make this thing as most efficient as possible. So it's really just playing the long game. That's really important. So
I love that. And it's looking back at the history, obviously. So in terms of these athletes versus previous athletes in previous life, right? Is it fair to say that a lot of these people, these clients had to peak for something or were training for something very specific for a lot of years of their life, and now they're finding themselves in this new zone of, well, I had to get ready for basic, then I had to get ready for selection, and then there were different parts of the selection that I knew I needed to be ready for, depending on maybe which branch I'm in or what team I'm trying out for or whatever else. Like, I know this one, I'm gonna be running for like 6 months straight, so I need to get my run capacity up, right? And this one, I know I'm gonna be swimming days on end, right? So I need to get my swimming capacity up. My point being is, their focus for 10 years was, maybe it's a little less, maybe it's more like 5 to 7 years, was about getting through these different parts or these different processes and being ready for those. And now they're not stuck, but now they found themselves in this spot where it's like, oh, I don't have to swim as much. I don't need to run as much. It's not about getting as big and beefy as I possibly can. And you're nodding your head. So, I think we're probably on the same page here.
100%.
But I guess my question in this is like you coming into this and doing this needs analysis and then going, okay, here's what this guy needs. How was that stuff being received, right? When you're going, hey, you don't need to run as much, or you need to work on your capacity, right? Your power. And they've never heard this before, right? Like This is going to be brand new news for them.
So, and you kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast of, as far as a program, like, yeah, I could have the best program on paper, but if I don't have buy-in from whoever I'm working with, the program is useless. I could get somebody to buy into a Zumba program and get great effort out of it if you get buy-in and trust. So the big thing is like breaking the barriers down and not immediately coming at you, Scott, your whole program is messed up. You need to change everything about what you're doing. Like that's not how you're going to get through to anybody. So you kind of have to build that relationship and then slowly integrate some changes if the changes are warranted, obviously. So, hey, man, you've been dealing with the same knee injury for X amount of time. Maybe try, instead of always having to go for a long zone 2, long, slow run, maybe we mitigate some of those mileage and maybe we throw you on a stair stepper. Maybe we throw you on an incline treadmill walk. And then we slowly kind of make changes in their program. And then there's more trust. And then eventually you fully have the keys to the car and you can run with it. So, so I've talked about this previously. If you follow our social media, like relationships are huge regardless. And that's what I've learned is going, and all strength coaches, if you work with individuals, like you should be mastering human relationships. Like college, I had to work with hundreds of athletes every year. Then you multiply that by multiple years over a decade. You start to learn things and just you understand sometimes the best communicators are the ones that just shut up and listen. So A lot of it is just listening, taking in feedback, and then we can get somewhere from a program design standpoint. So that's my belief system there.
Yeah, you answered my question in that statement, and that is building the relationship and getting the keys to the car takes the communication and being patient. I wonder, as a coach, if at the beginning or even now, where you're forced to make compromises because you're asking them to make a compromise at some level, right? I need you to, maybe we try doing less of this and a little bit more of this. So there's a negotiation process that has to go on there, right? I wonder what those negotiations typically are for a person like you in your position with your athletes. What are the things that come up the most?
Let's see. Things that
like you mentioned the zone 2 running. Like maybe we run less. Whoa, dude. Like I've been running for the last 10 years. Like this is just what I do. Like, and I know it works because I'm in great shape as a result of it.
Yeah.
And you might not be arguing that, but at the same time, like what is it taking away from? Where's the interference, which we'll talk about in a second?
Yeah, I would say one of the big ones is getting people over and this is a simple one, but everybody, I don't know about you, Scott, but when I started strength training myself back in high school and even grade school, like when I first started doing push-ups and sit-ups, I found the Arnold Schwarzenegger Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. Like it was upper body day, you got chest, tries, back buys, all that stuff. So that works. That worked for me for years. Scott, I'm sure you did the same similar model.
You haven't lived unless you've done or have that book. Yeah, man.
Absolutely. Still in my library. So just getting them to change their thought process on looking at a training program. And I'm biased because I run total body training. I typically, if you were to ask me like, what's my bread and butter template? It's a 3-day-a-week total body training split. And we can go further into why I do that. But if you were to look at it from without strength and conditioning experience and eyes, you'd be like, well, this doesn't make sense. I'm doing a squat, I'm doing a bench press pattern or something like that. And then I'm doing some jumps. Like that doesn't make sense. I'm not doing my chest back or whatever the split is. So that is one of the tough ones to get people over is we're not training for mirror muscles. Like training for availability. You want to be healthy and available. And we've talked about this before. A byproduct of good training, you'll get aesthetic results. So if you buy in and you're consistent and move the dirt every single week and over time, like results don't happen in a 4-week training block. Results happen by stacking days, weeks, months, years. Like, hey, you want to squat 400 pounds? Put a bar on your back for a decade straight. You'll figure some things out. So
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that's one of the big ones, is just getting people to open their minds to not having to do body part splits to get results. Because every man out there, if they strength train or do some form of training, they still want to look good. Like, so
sure,
you can still look good and be on more of a total body, more athletic type program. So I think that's really the message that I try to get out to a lot of people is that. And you can throw in some arms and bicep curls, triceps, because that's the thing too, is like that stuff is always going to be done. Like, even if I give somebody 3 days a week total body, it's not pulling teeth to get them to go on a Saturday to do some arms, whereas like if I didn't throw in single leg training, they're probably not going to do that on their own. So that's my other thought process there as well. So
it's giving them what they need and what they want at the same time, and figuring out how to do that, circling back to the importance of the relationship, building trust, and then showing them a result. So what I hear you talking about, total body, 3 days a week, hitting all the energy systems. We've alluded to all that stuff. What we're talking about is a concurrent programming, where we are trying to get all the things done and really work all these systems. We're trying to stay strong or get stronger. We're trying to put on mass or maintain mass. We are trying to improve our aerobic capacity. We're trying to build power, not in that order, by the way, but just we're trying to build that power and maintain that power that we have. That is asking somebody to do a lot of things, which is going to look much different than probably what it took for them to put on all that mass that they had or get that aerobic capacity that they've achieved over that time. And that's where the gray starts to come in and it gets fuzzy. The other thing you mentioned there was the consistency part. And all these programs, whether it's a running program, a bodybuilding program, whatever, it all works. If you do it and you stay consistent on it, it will yield a result. That starts to get really cloudy when you start to put it all together, because what you think you're doing and what you're trying to achieve, going back to needs and goals analysis, is not always the thing. So let's talk about concurrent programming philosophy and then methodology. And we can go into the weeds here for sure a little bit, because I think this is important for people to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, excuse me. So concurrent training is just raising all qualities at once. You may have different focus. Like, you can still have, the way I describe it is like you can have goal A, B, and C. So let's say it's a strength goal, a hypertrophy goal, and a conditioning goal. You can work all qualities within a training program. A lot of people think, hey, I'm going to do this 12-week block of training and it's got to be all hypertrophy so I get as big as possible in these 12 weeks. Yes, that does work. But for a tactical professional, there's a lot of things you got to balance. One, your job, you're not sitting behind a desk. And you have to be ready at all times. So you don't have the luxury of that 12-week block of hypertrophy. You could get called to do X, Y, and Z physical demanding things. So that's why I gravitate towards like that concurrent model of you're working strength, you're working power, you're working hypertrophy, and you're working conditioning. Are you training like a power lifter, a bodybuilder, and a ultra runner at the same time? No, but you could still run, you could still lift, you could still jump, you could still do Olympic movements all in the same program. And the way I program my cycles, I'll have one particular focus, but I'm not neglecting anything along the way. So maybe my percentages for my main movement, my squat, bench, and deadlift are more strength focused, but maybe my accessory movements are more hypertrophy or higher volume movements. And then I'll still have jumps. And I'm a big fan of change of direction, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So I think I've seen on social media, one of the things like after 30, like no point of the population does sprints. So, but then you see any tactical professional, you see it all over social media, like a cop having to chase after somebody. Well, if he doesn't do that in training, maybe he blows out a hamstring and that person gets away, or a military professional, like same thing. So I'm a big fan of just microdosing it. It's not the same volume that I trained. I'm not trying to train somebody to improve their 40-yard dash like they're getting ready for a combine, but you shouldn't just be doing long, slow distance running and then expect to sprint if you have to run to anything in your job. So that's why I like all qualities, because again, you want to be more injury resilient, which is the end goal. Because I forget what strength coach said it, but it's one of my favorite quotes. The best ability is availability. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. Like, yeah, you could lift like a power lifter, but if you're banging your back up every 6 to 12 weeks and you can't do your job, that's useless. Yeah, you could squat 505, over 500 pounds, but you can't put your kit on and you can't do your job. Well, you're kind of useless at that point. So you want to have a balance of absolute strength, which is how much total weight you can move. But really, you want to focus, regardless of the profession, relative strength. The longer I do this, the more I make the importance of relative strength. So how strong you are for your body weight. So,
yeah. So you touched on a lot of key words there. Yeah. Obviously, we talked about concurrent training, right, and improving all qualities at all the time. You talked about total volume, very important word here when we're talking about trying to do that. You talked about total strength or absolute strength versus relative strength. These are words that I think people understand, right, to some degree, but they don't understand how they fit together, and particularly in concurrent programming, which is, again, going to be often challenged by time, which was another thing we were talking about there. Like, how do I get all this done in the time that I have to do it in? And I think it's like college athletes, you might have those guys for 2 hours, 3 or 4 days a week, right? Where you got, and it may be sometimes in the gym, and you may be taking them out onto the field or the track or whatever their court, whatever it is that they're doing to do specific things. Most people that have a job or are busy, right, or working shifts, or again, could get deployed at whatever moment for however period of time. They don't have the luxury of that time. So it's putting it all together and getting people to understand how to do that. So just in digging a little deeper into the programming, we've touched on like periodization and a periodized program to get you ready for the event, the 400 meter sprint, that you have to do on the first day of your season, whatever else at the first track meet, whatever it is. Maybe it's the basketball season that's coming up, and we're prepping people, right, for this. We're going to peak at it, or we're going to work towards a peak, but we also recognize that we just want them to be ready, and part of that peaking happens through the season, and that's timed appropriately. Correct. The point of this being is, in this type of a programming, we're not really doing that. Right, we're trying to improve, but we're not looking for a peak conditioning at any point. If we're doing it correctly, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see improvements or maintenance. We're not seeing things go backwards. If things go backwards, then we can toggle some switches and twist some dials a little bit to figure out what's going on. But the point of this is this is an ongoing program, so you have to get it out of your head. I need to be ready for, maybe in your case, selection. No. That's over and done with, man. That was a long time ago, right? We're in a different place right now. So let's talk just about like periodization as it works within your concurrent programming, and maybe more talk about it in blocks and how you organize yourself. I think that's a term I've heard you use plenty of times, and that's the term that comes to me, is like, how are we blocking our training to make sure we're hitting everything, maybe getting an emphasis in some areas without taking away from others, things like that. What can you tell us without maybe us losing people with all the deep physiology and things?
When I taught master's level course on strength conditioning in college. And one of the first topics I'd cover is periodization. Periodization in its simplest form is just to have a plan. Like, number one, you have to have a plan. Like, I'm not creating a week at a time. I'm building a program out 12 weeks or longer at a time. And everything looks linear over time. You start more lower weight, higher repetitions, and then you gradually build towards maybe heavy singles, maybe you max out. Everything kind of looks like that, regardless if you're doing concurrent or linear periodization. And again, I don't want to lose people here, but so I choose, depending on what the end goal for either the client or the group of people, what are they training for? And then all right, what are the demands that we need to be successful for that particular thing or this particular time? And then you just work backwards from that date. So if anybody out there, whether you're trying to look good on a beach, whether you are trying to get ready for a half marathon, or if you're trying to get ready for tactical games, whatever it is, you take that date and work backwards from that. So if it's obviously you want to have more time, the better, as opposed to, all right, if you have something in 4 weeks, that's not ideal. You want to have a longer period of time so you can build certain qualities to make you successful for whatever that thing is. So it's really individual or team specific, whatever the demands of that thing you're training for. So, hey, if I need to do a long movement under a heavy ruck or something like that, well, we want to do that gradually over time, because everybody, whether it's the military, whether it's fire, I'm sure things have been sprung on them where they have to go out and just do this thing without any training. But if we can control those variables and do it and do a right progression, you're less likely to get injured. Like the main rule I typically follow is 10% increases each week. So make it really simple. We're not going from, hey, we're going to do a 5-mile ruck or a run, and then the next week we're going for a 15-miler. Like that's a massive increase in volume. So you want to slowly make those increases. I typically like to deload every 3 to usually 4 weeks. So my programs are 4-week blocks, build. On the 4th week, I take a deload, let the body adapt, and then I move into the next phase, and then it just broken up like that. So that's my bread and butter, and that's how I block out my training. And then from there, I have a system I follow. It's called the tier system. This is Joe Ken, famous strength coach. Yep, created it. And I think it works really well for tactical professionals, because he basically came out and said, well, my athletes have to basically be explosive in a fatigue state. Well, you think about anybody, especially tactical professionals, you have to be explosive. You could be fatigued. You might go on a long movement, or if you're a police officer, you run a long distance, and then you might have to get hands-on with somebody. Well, you want to train like you fight. So I gravitate towards more of that total body, like I mentioned earlier, but just the sequencing of the way I do it is typically the tier system. And we can go down that rabbit hole if you want, but I don't know. I don't know if the listeners want to understand too far in the weeds about that stuff. So
no, I love Joe Ken and his tier system. I think it makes a lot of sense. It was, people have heard about the conjugate system. We talk about, what's happening at Westside Barbell. And I think people kind of understand that when they're looking at, raw strength and power type of things. And then with the tier system, I think it runs parallel to that, where the way I look at it is it's more built for the athlete, not to take away from power lifters that you're not athletes. That's not what I'm saying.
Of course.
It's built for the person that does need to run, jump, move, change directions and things like that, because it allows space to put in the particular exercise selection or movement selection in order to make sure that those things get hit. So I love that system. It makes sense. It holds up, and it's not overly complicated. It's complex, and I think people may not credit it as much for that. Like when they're looking at programming, like you're talking about putting together, people don't understand that every rep, every ground contact, every load, percentage of load, every minute that you spend doing something is calculated. And it's not just about throwing a bunch of stuff together on different days and expecting to get, a good result from that. It's the calculated impact of all of those things. And that goes back to the understanding the science, having the background that you've had, but also seeing it in application. It's not just theory. It's like, how does this actually show up for the athletes?
Absolutely. Because the tier system is not a program. It's just a sequencing of exercises. And that's what a lot of people think, like, oh, the tier system is a program. No, you as the coach has to do the programming. Tier system is just the structure. And then you can plug and play for whatever your population is. You brought up earlier about athletes having a long block of time. Actually, college athletics has helped me with the individuals I work with now, because I would have a team come in at 6, and then I'd have another team on the hour every hour until they went to class. So I had to be really efficient with my time, which has then helped me. And that's why I've just kind of developed the tier system and then made tweaks to it to work with the population, because we have to fit a lot in a short amount of time. Because as you mentioned, like, everybody who's doing our programs, they have jobs, they have families, they have all these things that they're juggling, and training is one piece of that pie. So we want to if my workout goes over an hour, I'm not happy. Like I want you to be as efficient as possible with that time. And just because I do the 3 days total body lift, we're doing conditioning on those other days as well. So let's say it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday lift, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday conditioning. Conditioning could be if the group of individuals needs run improvement, maybe it's 400 meter repeats, 800 meter repeats, things like that. Maybe it's you need ruck improvement. All right. So that Saturday, instead of being a long run, it's going to be a ruck progression there. Maybe it's work capacity. Maybe you throw work capacity circuits in for conditioning. If your job requires, most people in the tactical profession, you have to carry heavy things for long distances. So we're going to do that in training. I'm a huge fan of carries. With the tactical population, I think everybody should be doing some sort of carry and variants of carry. So low carries being farmers carries, high carries being like shoulder carries, even overhead, as I try to tax the system, because not only are you getting good grip strength, because that's, I think, an under trained quality, because a lot of people you don't know what you don't know. Like, yeah, I'm going to do some grip. I'm going to get the hand grippers and do some grippers. Yeah, that's one piece of it, but there's a system to that. And I think it's important to have a system to the way you operate, because then your athletes understand your system. Like, all right, every Monday, my athletes know they're going to do a squat, some sort of upper body movement, some sort of lower body movement. And they know Wednesday is going to look a certain way. Friday is going to look a certain way. What people sometimes, like, this is also getting the message across. Like, I'm not one to just switch things up for the sake of change. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, we're going to do something completely different the next week. First of all, it's tough on the coach. And then that's not good training. Like, there's a difference between working out and training. Training has a purpose, a structure, an end goal. Working out is just fluff, and I'm just checking the box at what is it, Globo Gym or whatever the gyms are out there. So,
yeah, we talked about the checking the box. So I think a lot of people are out there looking for the right program that checks the box for them, which ultimately checks all the boxes for them. And over the years, there's people have been highly involved in some of these things. Like, again, this is the answer for me. Things like, well, first off, I'll use this word that's just it's sort of new maybe in the last year or so, that I think it's gotten a lot of popularity, and that is the hybrid athlete. And in a sense, that's kind of what you're talking about. You're good at a lot of things, right? I think that's what hybrid athlete means, but it's a buzzword now, and it gets Instagram likes, and there's a hashtag for it and shit like that. So, okay. So we're talking about being hybrid, but there's been things that people have adopted in terms of quote unquote programming, and I use that word loosely, that they've gotten a good result from. When I say that, their body looks better, they're stronger, they're leaner, they have more capacity, they have more power, things like CrossFit. And now we're seeing, High Rocks has been around for a little bit, but it's kind of taken the world by storm, especially with what's going on with High Rocks. So, or with CrossFit in terms of an entity. So I say all that to say this, like, the guys that you work with, or the folks that you work with, I'm sure there's men and women out there. I use that word kind of loosely as well. I'm sure they've had experiences with these things, and I'm sure they've seen some results from these things. And to me, that's one of the challenges that I have, is I've never been as in good a shape as I was when I was doing CrossFit regularly or consistently. Yep. Where does that fit into the equation with your population, and how do you overcome that and bridge the gap between, yeah, I get it, but we're talking about things differently now? What can you tell me?
So the first thing is just being open-minded. Like, you get people, and I respect certain aspects of CrossFit. I think it got a lot of people into just training with a barbell, men and women, like trying different movements, trying athletic-based movements. But the hybrid athlete is just a well-balanced program. Like, that's really what it should be. Like, we're training not just in one plane, meaning squat, bench, and deadlift, single plane, like, as whether you're an athlete, whether it's jujitsu, whether it's a tactical professional, if you're doing your job, you're not just in this fixed path. So regardless if it's CrossFit or what we do and what you do, like, train outside the box of just these canned, like, just set what's called sagittal plane movements, and get outside that. Train multiple movement patterns, multiple planes of motion, and you got to just try it. And then you'll realize like, wow, there's a set plan to this. It's not just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks. There's a purpose behind everything you do. And that's how it should be. And that's how you get buy-in. Like if you're somebody that needs constant change and constant variety, you need to just take a look in the mirror a little bit and just realize that there's more to training than just, oh, I liked what I did today. Like most of the days you show up to training, you're not going to like anything you do, but it's probably things you need to do. There's a lot more times where I don't want to do something and you end up just having to do it because that's what needs to be done. So yeah, for those who fall into those categories of CrossFit or high rocks, I think there's value to anything. The biggest thing is, regardless of whatever you buy into, and I'm biased to the way we train, but just follow the program as it's written. Don't just constantly make adjustments and then it just watered down. It's not the actual program. So, because I don't think any strength coach out there should live in absolutes. I think you're wrong if you live in absolutes. And I'm not going to judge somebody off their program because I'm not in their brain when they wrote that program either. Right. So I respect anybody who's in the strength and conditioning field. If you're putting yourself out there and you are putting together, obviously there's certain rules you should follow. Like there's certain things
there's principles. Yeah.
There's principles. But if you're following those principles, I'm not going to judge somebody on their program if they have their rhyme or reason. But every coach out there, if an athlete on one of my teams or an individual has a question about their program of why, I should be able to, I'm doing them a disservice if I don't answer that why. So every coach out there should be able to justify why they put something on a piece of paper or an app or anything. Like have your why to doing what you're doing. So
yeah, I love that. That's a major principle, right? That should not be violated by any coach. So it's funny you were saying there about the mirror and that thing, for me, that thing dictating a lot of really kind of weird training decisions. Like I'm not seeing outwardly, aesthetically the results I want to see. So this brings me back to, well, like we talk about high rocks and CrossFit, like the testing process or the check-in process. Like what am I actually getting accomplished here? And there, most of the time it's going to be like an event. Like you either, and that event can be looked at in the micro, the macro or the meso, right? Was I the leader on the board today? Like in this particular workout? Did I make the qualifier for the regionals, or whatever the competitions are? Or did I podium when I finally got to the thing? Again, going back through the micro, meso, macro thing or macro, meso thing. And at no point do you really know if you're better until you get there, right? And you do that test. And it's being evaluated kind of like on a leaderboard. Did I beat the other guy? There's not, in my experience, there isn't, and there's some great, that's a blanket statement. Let me retract. And I'll say this, I've known some really, really great CrossFit coaches, like super knowledgeable, super sharp folks that do a much better job than others. That's what you're going to get in the strength and conditioning world, period, across the board. But let's talk about the programming, how it's put together, and how you're doing check-ins. Like, what are you mentioned like there's a deload in there, but what about like a testing process? How, as an athlete on one of your programs, am I checking in to see, I want to trust you, bro, and I'm doing this, like I'm doing your program, but how do I know? Okay, I'm a little leaner, but I've been leaner on CrossFit, right? Kind of thing. So how do you program that in?
So if we're working with somebody one-on-one, we have the athlete film themselves performing a squat pattern, a bench pattern, a deadlift pattern, just to make sure. So basically a biomechanical analysis. How are they moving? Because anybody could say, I dealt with it all the time in college. I would ask a freshman, how much you squat? Oh, I squatted 405. No, you didn't. So they come in and they were squatting 6 inches down, not even anywhere close to depth. So we want to see where they're at technique wise. So technique being number one, because I don't care what your long-term goals are. If you're not moving and having good movement qualities, that those goals don't matter. Let's do it the right way. I'm going to take that grandiose goal of whatever, 405 squat, and let's get you to parallel or below parallel if you're able to. And let's set the baseline. And then we build the foundation from there. Because I'm a big believer, as most people are in strength and conditioning, of technique. So let's look at your technique first, and then we build out the program. So if it's one-on-one, what is your end goal for 12 weeks or longer if I'm working with somebody not 6, 9, 12 months out, depending on what they're training for. Some athletes, I have one guy right now working one-on-one. He's training for a tactical games. I know we're working together for the next year, and that's his end state. So the qualities for that are going to look a little different than somebody going to the police academy or whatever it may be. So along the way, I'll have check-ins, whether it's ruck performance for somebody, whether it's, hey, we need to improve your mile time, mile and a half time, whatever your standard is. And we'll have check-ins along the way. So, because not everything works for everybody. So there's not one size fits all. Yeah, principles obviously makes the most sense to follow principles, but sometimes something just doesn't work with somebody. So we have those check-ins along the way. So you're not at the end of 12, 16, whatever weeks. And at the end, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't improve. Well, we're going to address that along the way. So from conditioning standpoints, I'll throw in run time check-ins or heart rate or things like that along the way. If on the strength side, I'll do open sets, meaning we're going to do a max set at 90% and see what your rep test is. And if you're above a certain threshold, hey, we're going to increase your training max based on how you did at a particular percentage. So you don't necessarily have to test. Yeah, we'll do 1 rep maxes, absolutely. But there's ways to check in along the way during a cycle without having like a standard testing day, if that makes sense. So
it makes perfect sense. It's music to my ears. That's what I thought I would get from you. And so you can build this into the program. So
100%.
On that heavy strength day, it's a push day, right? We're bench pressing or squatting or whatever we're doing, right? Yeah. It's built into that workout. And it's not just, we just decided to throw this in today. The previous workouts to that planned for this, and the workouts that come after that have also planned for this as well. It's not just the WOD of the day that we throw in there. It's calculated, and it's part of the program. So you don't have to take another day to do this or know, like, I'm going in for my max squat session today. I'm going to be fried, right? Yeah. So the rest of my workout is shit, right? It is, I've now lost all those other components because I've just tax the CNS to a level that I'm done. So everything else is done. And I didn't do my heavy squat day or my test day and then go out and the next day also do my 40-yard dash time. So again, that might sound obviously very elementary to you, but like I see that happening in other programs. I'm like, who thought this was a good idea? And it's not me bagging on anybody in particular. It's just like, testing is important, and if you program these things right, they should be built into the program, not these on-the-side things that are kind of arbitrary in a way that weren't well prepped for or planned for, because maybe that isn't your max squat. Maybe there's actually 10% more in there, but because you were poorly planned, again, going back to periodization to have an organized plan, this is what you're left with. So you don't really know. You're just guessing. And if you're basing all your other percentages for the rest of your program on those metrics, well, now the best laid plan, as we were saying, is kind of worthless because you're off in too many things. It's a finely tuned machine particularly when we're looking at how you program with the concurrent programming. That's absolutely, it's music to my ears, man.
It's good. I'm glad we're on the same page. It's not just the beard that we agree on, so it's good. So
mine's got quite a bit more gray than yours, though.
Yeah, I'm getting there. And along that same line is we'll have tests for absolute strength. So how much total weight you can lift. Absolutely. We'll have a relative strength and endurance, like max pull-ups or max push-ups, something like that, because we're including that in the program anyway, but we're going to have check-ins along the way. And then if you work with us one-on-one, then we can obviously dive deeper, be more specific with what equipment you have access to, because that's going to dictate a program. Are you training in a Planet Fitness versus a garage gym versus the University of Alabama weight room where you have all the bells and whistles? So there's a lot that goes into program design. And there's a lot that goes into the individual as well. Some individuals are turnkey. You can do anything with them because they have such a high training age. There's so much experience with training. Turnkey, boom, you can do anything. And the way I look at exercises from a program design standpoint, it's exercises are tools in my toolbox. So what tools can I break out for this individual? Every strength coach wants to break out all the bells and whistles and all the coolest stuff, but does your client need that? No, probably not. So depending on a lot of those factors, some are turnkey, some you need to work with a little bit and maybe dig up the foundation and work with the house a little bit more rather than try to progress them into this advanced modality that they're not ready for. So yeah, it's cool to squat with chains and bands, but if you can't do a goblet squat or a bodyweight squat the correct way, probably shouldn't be doing a program with bands and chains. Just that's one simple example. But
it's a great example, and everybody wants to do the sexy stuff, and those chains and bands are sexy, but it's the foundations, right? It's those fundamental things, and then what are your limitations? So there's a couple there. You mentioned things like equipment needs or equipment usage and what's going on there. You talked about the importance of exercise selection. What do they have available? How do I make this work for them based on their very specific needs? And in this case, we're talking about more, you were mentioning like sometimes you get these one-on-one clients that are turnkey. All you got to do is give them the plan, point them in the right direction, and they're off to the races. Best kind of clients in the world, right? Yeah. Low maintenance. We twist here, we toggle there. There doesn't even need to be a ton of communication all the time. When it is, it's very focused, very direct. And at other times, it's a little bit more open, and we're trying to problem solve as we go down the path. And one of those problems or challenges is, I think more the answer is the difference between training the individual versus training groups and where they're entering into the program, particularly like in a concurrent program. So let's say we got a group of 10, right? And they have a specific goal and we put this program together, but they're all at varying levels of strength, speed and power, capacity, mobility, again, some are self-starters and very motivated. Some you got to light the fire a little bit more than others kind of thing. Talk about that a little bit and kind of how you guys overcome that.
Yeah, so we just started something with one of our training teams. We have Warfighter, which is a more advanced, intermediate to advanced level program, but we just created Foundations, Warfighter Foundations, which is more of an entry level. Hey, maybe you don't have a ton of experience with a barbell. We're going to set the foundation so then you can progress into more advanced modalities and things like that. If you're working individually or with a group of individuals face to face, you can make those adjustments. And like in college, I had to do that all the time I had freshmen working out with seniors. Well, my seniors would be an extra set of coaching eyes. So they were force multipliers for me. So they could be my eyes and they could help some of those guys along. And then eventually they progress into being able to do these advanced movements. But when you're coaching more on the online platform, that's the system that we've been using, is having a foundation program to build all the right techniques and all those qualities. So then it sets you in the right direction for more advanced training. So
yeah, it's a must. It's a must. You have to have an entry point for those that aren't quite ready, even though they want it, they might not be ready for it. And again, that is the challenge of online programming. That is the space that we live in. It's the realities of doing business. And I think that, those foundational programs probably don't get the credit they deserve with regard to how you're building those things up. And nobody wants to say, oh, I'm basic, so I need to do the foundational program first. They want to jump right into the sexy stuff. So the question I would have is like, what kind of like evaluation, self-assessment or evaluation methods, might you guys use, or would you suggest other coaches use in order for people to make those kind of assessments for themselves? Because that's another hard part of this is I've got this group of people, but they're on the other side of the globe, or they're 3 states away or whatever. And I can't get in front of them. So from a business perspective, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. In person, it's easy. It's easy to make those adjustments. Virtually and online coaching is definitely more of a challenge. So communication is huge. So we use Train Heroic as our platform. So we can communicate with athletes that way. And if there's any adjustments, hey, I can't back squat because I have this X, Y, and Z issue. I can't hit depth, whatever. We can make the adjustments. Hey, switch to front squat, or just communicating that way. One-on-one, it's easier, even if it's virtual or online, because then we can have the athletes send videos of their technique. We know what equipment they have access to. So again, going back to the tools in the toolbox, if I'm working with somebody in their garage gym, it hinders some of my tools that I can tap into. So it's really just communication And as much as we can get videos of the athletes training, because again, we try to do, we do biomechanical analysis. So we know their squat pattern, their bench pattern, their hinge patterns are where they need to be, because that's going to dictate where we can go with them after that. So, but yeah, I agree. Like working with a large group of individuals online is a challenge. And that's why having a forum there where they can ask questions, or we can make in the notes to make this adjustment. Hey, if you don't have a belt squat, I'm just using that as an example.
Yep.
Hey, do this squat instead. Or it's just really giving them, trying to be detailed with the notes that we prescribe our workouts through.
So thanks for walking through that. I know,
Yeah.
so that's more like a business end of the house kind of thing. And the reason I wanted to have you say that is because if there's people out there listening to a program and they're bought into a program and they're paying for it and they're not getting that kind of attention or don't feel like they can, that should be a red flag. You should be thinking about that, because good coaches out there are doing what you just said. They're making themselves available. They are making adjustments to the program. And so in that same thread, I wonder how much of your time during the day is spent doing that versus the sexy programming stuff, right? Or the one-on-one interaction is just managing all of the things that your clients need on a regular basis through those types of processes.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Both types of clients make you better. So the guy that's turnkey that can do everything, he's going to make you better. He or she's going to make you better, because that's where you have to get more creative, because it's a lot harder to get that individual strong, because most likely they've been training for 10 plus years. Whereas the new lifter, new to strength training, it's easy to get results. If any strength coaches out there, they love working with the new person, because I don't like the word newbie gains, but you're going to get results for a longer period of time without having to get too creative. They just got to execute. But they give you different challenges. So the more advanced athlete, you have to get more detailed with the program design, whereas the new lifter, you have to get more detailed with coaching technique and
execution.
That is sometimes very challenging. One of the hardest things for a strength coach to do, and I'm sure any strength coach listening to this can agree, is teaching somebody how to hip hinge. Meaning, like, as you guys don't know out there, like doing an RDL. It may seem easy if you know how to do it, but try teaching somebody who's never done it, and just bend your knees and bend at the waist. If you can't do that, you really can't do anything in the weight room. You can't deadlift, you can't clean, you can't pick up a dumbbell, you can't pick up something for a farmer's carry. Like, need to know how to brace your body. So working with those individuals who can't do that makes you better from that standpoint, because certain coaching cues work for some people. Some coaching cues work for other people. Some don't work at all. And you really got to get creative. So both sides of the aisle make you better as a coach. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, it's a great point. And yes, you're right. I agree with you 100%. The hinge is the hardest thing. Even when they're standing right in front of you, you got to have like 10 solutions to that explanation, right? 100%. And to that problem. And now you're trying to do that with somebody online, go ahead and put a factor of 10x on that. When you can't get your hands on them, or they're limited to equipment, or there's a communication barrier there or something like that. I couldn't agree with you more. And the point, again, this just reinforces my point of the importance of having a coach that you're not just getting a program from, but getting some very specific feedback on as the program goes by. It's really easy. No, it's not that easy. It's easy to sell a program. It's much harder to keep somebody on that program and keep them getting the results. So I want to go back to something you said there about the newbie gains versus we're talking about training age here, and going back to like patience levels and getting buy-in, and I think the value increases the higher your training age is with a good coach. And I mean, the value for the coach's value goes way up, and conversely, so does at the same time, so does the value of the program itself, right? Yes. Because now I'm looking at some very, very much more specific things. We're going back to toggling switches and twisting dials. It's much easier for the new person to do that. If I can get you to do the right things the right way, again, the execution process, just keep doing that for a while, right? Just keep doing that, and you're going to see the strength go up. You're going to see the speed of power. You're going to see the capacity is going to start going up. When you get deeper into this, and again, going back to the 30-something individual that's been doing this for a long time that you're working with, What tools do you guys use outside of video, if any, to help people? Like, what are what are your clients investing in, or what are you asking them to invest in if anything? And what I mean by that is, like, are we measuring velocities? Are we doing power plate stuff if they have that stuff available to them? Like all the cool tools that you would have probably available to you in that Alabama strength and conditioning room,
Yes.
like, are there things out there that you guys are using or implementing with your athletes to get to squeeze out those extra percentage points in those those different modalities or components?
Great question, because I've used it all. I've used force plates. I've used velocity-based units. If the individual, whether if they're on their training team or if we're coaching them one-on-one, if they have access, that's one of the first questions I ask. Like, what do you have at your disposal? Like, what do you have? If they have velocity-based units, I will 100% use them, and I will teach them how to implement it in training. Like, I will prescribe velocities instead of percentages or whatever it may be. And that could be a whole nother podcast talking
That's
about.
a whole nother conversation. Yes, you're right.
But it really just depends on what they have access to. Not a lot of people have access to velocity-based units. I would use them a lot more. In college, I used them a ton because we had them. But it's really just opening the line of communication and trying to create a culture amongst your team, whether it's online, definitely in person. You got to have a living, breathing culture because you're part of that culture, but everybody on the team is part of that culture. So now it's living and breathing amongst, I run Team Lunch Pail on our crew, and the team is incredible. Like, there's communication amongst the members. A lot of times, if I don't see a message, somebody else who's been on the team since day one answers the question because they know how I program. So it's living and breathing. But it's just opening that dialogue and is really important, whether you're coaching somebody in person or virtually or online. So.
Yeah, I love that. That another tool you can use is the people that are already in the program that are there to support other people in the program, whether they're on one side of the United States or the other, for that matter too, to jump in there. And again, like a lot of coaches will, whether it's Train Heroic or they're using Facebook, groups or using something like Meta groups or whatever they're doing to do that, there can be a lot of chatter that can go on in there. And it can get very unfocused, or it can go very tangent, and there needs to be like somebody moderating it. And if you're the coach that's having to do that all the time, not giving some I don't know what's like autonomy to the group to kind of manage itself, that culture is very, very tough to maintain. You're probably one of the luckiest coaches in the world if you've got members of your group that are on your programming that are also providing assistance or guidance for other people on your program. That's a tough thing to do, man. That's off to you. I don't know how you're doing that, but good work.
Yeah, trying. It's a credit to the team. So
that was just some business end questions, just some kind of how you're managing your groups. I think it's important for people to hear from the coach, like what are they actually getting from the coach? And it's not just programming, but it's it's not just your knowledge and what goes on the paper, what gets uploaded into the app, but it's the other things that make the program work, that make the program successful. So you mentioned like you got these two different programs. There was the foundational program. Yep.
Warfighter as well as Team Lunch Pail. And then we also do one-on-one coaching. And then we have this program, 90 Unchained. It's basically 90 days where we're giving education to the client, both because we also have a dietitian on the staff as well. So dietitian handles that education. I handle the strength and conditioning education. So we're giving them education along with a strength and conditioning plan as well as a nutrition plan. And then one-on-one coaching is one-on-one coaching. They get strength conditioning, communication, obviously with the coach. So there's a couple different layers to what we do. So
but it's the important layers, man. So like it's the nuts and bolts. It's that make the thing go, and it's also a little bit of leading the horse to the water, and then maybe they're not drinking all of it yet, but you can make them really thirsty by hitting them with all those different angles with all those different people. They're not hearing from the same person every time, right? So you're hearing some different perspectives and whatnot. And again, I think that's an important part of working in a situation where like I'm investing in this program. How much is this person on the other end of this program really investing back into me outside of the 8 hours it took them to write this thing? And I should just pay them for that. So again, just a different level of coaching. And I don't want to beat that up too much, but I'd be hard pressed to find anybody that's been in the had fitness endeavors for a long time and hasn't purchased something online. And there's a stark compare and contrast to what you get, from one program to the next. Not to say the programming wasn't good, right? The program might have been great, but what did I get to support me in that programming to get me to my goal or to help me avoid falling into a pitfall or winding up in a gutter somewhere that I didn't even realize I was number one getting myself into, or now that I found myself there, like, how did this happen? Like, how did I get here? Those are very frustrating things for clients on the other end, and they're frustrating for coaches, but those that are staying on top of the ball can usually mitigate a lot of stuff. But you do this thing long enough and hard enough as a user, things come up. So having resources to get yourself out of those situations is important.
And and especially you as well as myself, like, I'm sure you can attest this. I've made a ton of mistakes in my strength and conditioning career. I haven't written perfect programs ever. Like, I've made mistakes in college that I've learned from. So we're trying to make it easy for the individual so they don't have to think. Our job is to do the thinking, steer the ship in whatever direction that we deem necessary. And then the person on the other end of that program just has to execute. We have to explain and get the message out. What is the intent of this? What are we getting accomplished over these 12 weeks? Takes the thinking out. You don't have to think. You just show up, you execute the program, and we'll deliver the results as best as we can. So there's a lot of variables, that goes into performance and the end result. You get 10 people on the same program, you get 10 different results because of sleep patterns, hydration, nutrition. It's a bunch of different things. But
it's a matrix.
Our job is to steer the ship and just take the thinking out of it for the user. So
which is, again, the beautiful thing. If you are one of those users and you finally find yourself in that point where I know I don't have to think about this, I trust the process, I stay consistent with the process. If I have an issue, I know where to go. I know where to get an answer for this. I know at some level these guys are already looking out for me not having an issue. So I just wake up, I wake up, I look at my app, I just know what I have to do today. I have an hour out of my day. If I just do this and get through today, what I need to do tomorrow will be there for me, and I can get through that on top of all the other stuff that I have to do during the day, on my job, at home with the family, with the kids, trying to have a life, pay bills, all that other stuff. That's the beauty in getting the right kind of programming from the right people. So here's a kind of a tangent question, and that is, every strength and conditioning coach I know finds himself in a rabbit hole on something multiple times in their career, right? Where they get really fired up about something. They really dig into, I need to know more about this, right? At this point, like, there's this new research that's come out, or my buddy over here has been doing these things and getting these interesting results. Anything on your plate or on the modern athlete plate for the team where there's like, we're really fired up about this right now. We're exploring it more. We've been talking about it a lot. Anything you can share?
So I'm trying to think, a topic in strength and conditioning that I've been going in the weeds about, really just trying to hone my craft and figure out, now that I got my structure and my system down, and again, Joe Ken to thank for the tier system. I've just messed with it a little differently. Just trying to hone in on that and just get creative with, all right, if I have this structuring system, how can I add different progressions, regressions to the same structure? So how I can build that out to the most advanced model possible, but then all the way down to the person who's never touched a weight before. So it's, as a strength coach, there's a lot of things that get in front of people, especially now with social media. So it's our job to kind of sift through it. But everything comes in waves. Things were popular 10 years ago. They don't get popular. They go out and then they come back in. Like zone 2, I remember getting into strength conditioning. Zone 2 training, you'd always see zone 2, and then you'd see a skinny, like, cross-country runner, don't do zone 2. Now zone 2 is back with a vengeance of, like, that's what you have to do. And I agree with it, because I was guilty of it myself. I lifted a ton and didn't do a ton of conditioning, just tried to eat and lift as much as possible. But if you want to do this for a long period of time and play the long game, you're going to need conditioning no matter what. Whether you're a power lifter, if you're a power lifter, you don't need to be necessarily trying to train for an ultra marathon, but you have to do some sort of conditioning, because the better conditioned you are, the better you're going to recover from those strength training sessions, which will allow you to train and do the things you want to do that much more effectively. So I know it kind of went off on a tangent there, but it's just, yeah. So it just keep staying up with the research. And again, like I mentioned earlier, when we started the podcast, we try to blend the Dolph Lundgren, or the Ivan Drago, I should say, from Rocky IV, and the Rocky Balboa, because I'm a big fan of like blue collar, just get it done, hard work, but blending that together with the science. And I think that's how you get a well executed program. Because yeah, I think sometimes you need to grab a sledgehammer and hit a tire, and sometimes you need to be hooked up to a heart rate monitor and running a specific heart rate zone for your training. So it's blending those two together is really my belief system as far as training as a whole. So
I love that. It's coming out from a couple different angles, but I think I don't know if it was today or yesterday, I saw a really good post that you guys put up on Instagram about the argument or the debate between the scientist and the bro science guy, right? The dude with the degree versus the bro science guy. And maybe you just talk about that for just a little bit, and we'll kind of start to wrap this up. But I love that post because it hit some really key points that it kind of made me chuckle and go, yeah, I like this.
It's the same way I would argue with somebody going like if you're training for a particular event, whether it's powerlifting, an endurance event, those are cases where you need to go all in. But like as a whole, you need balance. So like I mentioned earlier about the balance with conditioning and strength and everything like that. Same goes for the bro science as well as the science, like the actual research science, is you have to have under the bar experience as a strength coach, but you also have to have the science back to support it as well. Like certain things are going to, like Louis Simmons, who's godfather of strength and conditioning, he was doing chains and bands before they were even researched. So technically that would be called bro science because he was figuring it out in the gym and it was working for him. So I'm going to push the threshold myself and try things out. Maybe not with my clients yet, but if it works, you can call it bro science, but like there's something to be said about under the bar experience. So you can't be a strength coach that just reads research and has no experience. I'm not saying you have to be a power lifter, squat 500 pounds, all those things, but as a strength and conditioning coach, you got to practice what you preach and sharpen your sword every single day, because we've said it before, like your body's your business card. So practice what you preach and have the blend of the science-based principles, but under the bar experience, and blend those things together. Yeah, bro science, like whatever methodology out there, but I don't kind of get caught up in it too much, but I think it's just blending the two together. So
I love that. It was a great explanation, and there's value in everything, just like we were saying before in terms of different programming. And, you know, again, having a basis of knowledge in order to get to understand where's that bro scientist coming from. And at the same time, on the more the research science side of things, like what this bro scientist is saying here isn't altogether wrong. There may be missing some detail here, and maybe it's slightly misunderstood, but in the end, it works itself out here. So yes, like this does work. And again, that time under the barbell, you know, whatever it is, the time under the bar, that will show that ends up showing itself, whether you like it or you don't. This does work to some extent. I think it's when you start that works really well in the world of bodybuilding. I think we owe a lot of things to bodybuilders for teaching people how to get bigger and stronger, right? They get that. Powerlifting, same thing. Like you don't have to have an exercise science master's degree or whatever it is to be a very successful individual with bodybuilding and help other people do it. At the same time, like when we start getting into this concurrent programming and you start managing all those things, and you just talked about like the importance of aerobic training as it relates back to power and strength training from a recovery perspective, and just an overall conditioning perspective in order to do this for the long term and longevity. Ask a bodybuilder about aerobic versus alactic training and see what you get. And that'll expose some things right there, because there is a lot of science behind this. And again, it's a wheel and it turns and things go away for a while, but almost 30 years now, it always comes back around. fundamentally, we understand things pretty well. We're always going to understand a little bit of new stuff as it comes up, but fundamentally, those principles do not change. They stay the same, right? There's maybe you could squeeze a little bit here, you squeeze a little bit there, and somebody's going to write a post or an article or do a podcast on something spectacular and raise some eyebrows. But at the end of the day, it's the basic stuff, and you need to understand it at a basic level. So my question in this would be, when you're out there, you mentioned Joe Ken, love that, love his book, love that stuff, that system. Who else? Like, where do you guys go? Who do you chat with? Like, who are you talking to out there that keeps you on your toes and fires you guys up, or to debate with, or whatever else?
I try to leave no stone unturned. So it could be, and again, going back to exercise or tools in the toolbox. Well, philosophies are tools in the toolbox as well. So as a strength coach, I'm going to have some bodybuilding techniques in my program. I'm going to have some powerlifting techniques in my program, or program styles. I'm going to have Olympic lifting kind of methodology in there. So I'm trying to everybody steals.
Yeah,
every coach out there has something. So you're trying to get information from all these domains and then blend them into your program. And I think that's what makes a good coach, because certain things of Louis Simmons, like Westside Barbell, may not work for the population that I work with, but I can steal some principles from him. Same thing from Olympic lifting. I can steal some principles and put them in my program. So yeah, I try to leave no stone unturned. I have colleagues in the field, obviously connecting with you. I'm going to be picking your brain a ton after this, even more. So you're going to be one of the guys I'd be reaching out to. But I still have colleagues in college athletics that I talk to daily, and I'm trying to pick their brain, because I can't be at every single conference. I can't read all the research out there. I'm just reaching out to my network of strength coaches, and there's a lot of people that put good stuff out there. But yeah, I try to leave no stone unturned and try to find good information everywhere. So
I love that. Well, that's exactly how I found you. And the reason why I reached out to you, because I needed to have this conversation. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to do that. You guys responded super fast and came on. I mean, this is the stuff that gets me fired up. It's the whole reason for the show, is to make those connections and hopefully broaden that network to where other coaches see, oh my God, there's another great coach out there. This is somebody that I should be following or should be reaching out to, and also hearing straight out of your mouth that that's exactly what you're looking for. Like, hey, like I'm trying to learn from everybody that I possibly can. And I think more of that needs to happen. And the strength and conditioning world is, it's a lot like the tactical world or the law enforcement world, or the fitness world just in general is weird like that. It's like, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This is all a secret. I developed this. This is my system. When really you are just stealing information from everybody else, but I don't look at it as stealing. It's borrowing it. It's using it. And you're putting it out there for free, right? Like we're doing right now. Like, hey, here's the things. You guys are putting it all over your Instagram. There's some really quality stuff there. You guys have podcasts. You guys have, the website where they can go read articles and things that you guys have posted. They can hear from other people. Some really good stuff coming out of you guys, which is, again, that's how I discovered you, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. So, again, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I have one more question for you, and it's actually like, I'm going to ask a favor, and like I need you to promise me something, is that at some point we can get into deeper stuff on another podcast about some different topics, man, because there's so many things like that pop up. I go, I need to talk to somebody about this, and just reach out and go, hey, what's your experience or whatever. So promise me we can do this again sometime.
100%. Because during the whole podcast, there was opportunities. We could have made this thing 4 hours long if we wanted to.
Yeah, totally.
I'd be honored to. And I truly appreciate it, Scott. I think what you're doing is great, because as strength and conditioning coaches, I think sometimes we get in our own silos and we don't do a good job of kind of expanding out. And like you mentioned, sharing that information. We're all fighting the same fight. So we should be willing to just share this information through trial and error and all these things. So what you're doing is incredible. And I'd be honored to come on again. And for all you guys listening, I truly appreciate you guys listening to us talk for the past 2 hours. I think it was awesome for me. So I really appreciate it. So
yeah, man. Well, you're welcome. And again, we will definitely revisit this at another time. In the meantime, if there's anything I can do to help Modern Athlete and yourself, with whatever it is that you guys are doing out there, just say the word. I'm happy to do it. You guys are doing the right stuff as far as I'm concerned. I love it. It's informational, it's educational in that sense. Some of it's also it's entertaining. I love the vibe, and I love the groups of people that you guys are working with too. I mean, your transition out of the collegiate setting into the setting that you're in now, and the types of folks that you're helping out there who need this, who want this, and you're making it accessible for them, and you're doing it in a way that I think people can relate to, which again was a huge draw for me. Like I could talk to a lot of strength coaches. I know a lot of them, and it's very dry and it's very clinical all the time and whatever. And for me, that's fine. But when you're looking at the people that really need this stuff, and who you're trying to deliver the information to and really help, they got to be able to. They got to be able to take this in and kind of turn it around a little bit and pick the pieces out. And you guys do a really excellent job of putting that out there. So keep doing that, man. Keep doing that.
Feeling is mutual, brother. I really, really appreciate it, man. And I knew we were going to hit it off right away. Once I signed on, I saw the beard too. So I think I knew this would be an easy one for us. So
beard game is strong. All right, well, keep that up, man. Again, thanks again for your time, and I will look forward to the next one. And I hope the folks that listened and made it through this hour and 26 minutes do too. So thanks very much, man.
Thanks, Take care. Take care.